Hi, and welcome to another episode of Hot Takes with me, the Silver Fox. Now, we have a lot of stories to get through on this fine Saturday morning, but I thought we'll start with something light and rather amusing. The SNP brought in the short-term lets licensing law, not easy to say, and of course that has been an unmitigated disaster because both the police and local authorities say they will not sort of back it and push it and then do the inspections and things. They don't have the resources. And so it's another pointless law brought into existence by a rather pointless government. Well, they've been hoist rather much with their own petard because unbeknownst at the time of them introducing this, the people who were introducing it didn't realise that the state itself owns holiday lets. And of course, they've got to comply with their own rules, and they've written off to the local council to apply for this licence. Unfortunately, the council has declined the licence. And so now, instead of being these properties that the state can make money from for short-term lets, they've become a rather expensive albatross round their necks. It's another failure in the whole sort of train of failures that this SNP government has introduced. They really are circling the fail drain, aren't they? Anyway, we'll take a look at this, see what's going on and see why it's just so typical of SNP policies being purely stupid and moronic. Here goes. So SNP ministers left red-faced as holiday lodges owned by the Quango to be left vacant due to the short-term let restrictions. So they brought this in and they say, "Oh, you got to do this. You got to be, got to be registered. Got to have that." And didn't realise that it would apply to them as well. And so these lodges that are owned by the state, and previously they'd rent out and make quite a bit of money from because they're very nice places. Now they're just sitting there empty, costing money, and not raising anything because the people involved say, "We've got to micromanage and control every aspect of every business in Scotland. We won't let anyone do anything that we don't get a finger in that pie." It's all money making. It's got nothing to do with real sort of improvements for tourists or anything. It's all just a way of the government sort of doing a protection racket, effectively. Anyway, Meadowbank and Duddingston lodges in Edinburgh's Holyrood Park were previously rented out by Historic Environment Scotland, but they'll now lay vacant due to Scottish Government short-term letting rules. Oh dear, what a shame. It's very embarrassing for the SNP, because they're morons. SNP ministers have been left red-faced after it was revealed that the royal lodges owned by the Scottish Government Quango will be forced to lay vacant after falling foul of new short-term letting rules. Meadowbank and Duddingston lodges in Edinburgh's Holyrood Park were rented out by Historic Environment Scotland to raise cash. They're now going to cost them cash. It's going the other way. And they're not allowed to sell them. This is the other thing. They can't just sell them. So what do? Now, they will remain vacant as an application to keep renting them out was rejected by Edinburgh Council. HES had applied for retrospective planning permission, but this was rebuffed on the grounds that that would represent a loss of residential property, not outweighed by economic benefits. And so they can't rent them out. They can't give them away. They can't sell them. So now they've just got to sit there, pay the council tax on them, pay the maintenance on them, pay the ticker over on the heating and electricity because you've still got to keep them up to standard because they're listed buildings and all this. So it's an expense that's been taken on rather than a profit to be made because morons. Previously, they'd been sitting vacant for 5 years before they were refurbished and then let out from August 2020, with the money raised bringing in much needed income for the public body. The buildings were previously used by Holyrood Palace staff and latterly by HES workers. Following the refusal of planning consent on August the 16th, the listing for the Meadowbank Lodge has been taken down, although the two-bedroom premises still appears as a let on the HES website, but the link has been deactivated. Of course, it has to be because you can't let it out, silly people. The Quango paid an agency nearly £9,000 a year to manage and market the lodges. Many accommodation providers needed to apply for retrospective planning permission for change of use for their properties before then applying for a short-term let licence, with the deadline being October the 1st. This was refused for the 2 historic lodges. So you have up and down the whole of Scotland. All these people, first of all, had to pay their local council for this change of use, which could be quite expensive. Having got it, you then have to apply to the council again for the lettings licence, which can be quite expensive. And there's no guarantee after paying for it that you're granted it. And so it could be money gone and you don't even get it. And so it's money down the drain. And so to avoid all this, a lot of them have just not complied. They've just not registered. Now, some have actually closed. And it has led to issues of accommodation, shortages. And some are just carrying on as normal, but they're just not even bothering to apply. Having sort of confirmed that nobody's going to police these licences, because there are no police licence inspectors anymore, because the police can't afford to run them. They've got too few officers as it is. And of course the local councils aren't given any money to go and do the policing of these things either, because of cuts to central funding. And so they're bringing in rules. The central government's bringing these rules. Oh, you've got to have these licences. And the council's saying, fine, you've got to have the licences. That's fine, yeah. But we're not policing them. Because morons. It really is. It's an absolute low IQ. It's an idiocracy, isn't it? Can we stop putting morons into positions of authority? Anyway, a spokesman for Historic Environment Scotland said, we applied for retrospective planning permission for a change of use for 2 ancillary properties within Holyrood Park, and we're in the process of applying for the short-term let licence. We're disappointed to have our application refused, as prior to being earmarked for short-term lets, both properties had been vacant for over 5 years. As properties in care, there's no residential alternative for the buildings, and we were keen to bring them back into use to provide additional revenue we could reinvest into our properties and work to promote and protect Scotland's heritage. Following the recent decision, we plan to review the next steps. Basically, they are giving up on any kind of attempt to get these things back into a state where they can let them out, because they can't change the use. Now, the only way they can do that, and here's the irony, the only way that they can do this is to go to the office of the Deputy Prime Minister in Westminster, for he deals with such things. And of course, that would mean that you have the SNP, the pro-separatist SNP government, having to apply to Westminster for permission to change the use of buildings it owns in order to rent them out, because they're breaking the rules that the SNP government have brought in. I bet the irony is lost on these people. It is just wonderful though, isn't it? When you see morons confused and befuddled by their own stupid rules that they expect everyone else to obey. Unfortunately, of course, everyone else is sticking 2 fingers up and saying, we ain't obeying, and just getting on with it. So yeah, I mean, there's going to be a lot of people, especially out in the middle of nowhere, running these little bed and breakfasts and short-term lodging lets and things like that, holiday homes, who just aren't bothering, and people will still go, and they don't care, and they know that nobody's going to come and go, can I have a look at your licence? It's a load of rubbish, isn't it? Anyway, I shall finish there and come up. Somewhere deep in the bowels of Holyrood is a small office, and in there is a man with a list, and every day he writes another thing on that list, and it is the SNP Book of Fail. And in years to come it will be published. It'll be 9 volumes, it'll be expensive and leather bound, it'll take months to read and go through. But that's because there's so many fails from one stupid party. They are absolutely, without doubt, the most moronic bunch of imbeciles ever to have been given authority anywhere in the world at any time in history. I can't understand. They haven't got one single thing right. Not one. I mean, this is it. You look at every single stage, and I mean every single decision, without fail, they make the wrong decision. It's got to be deliberate. It can't... Randomly, they've got to get something right. The fact that they're getting nothing right means it has to be deliberate. It's unbelievable, isn't it? And it's pity for everyone else to live with it. Anyway, I shall stop there. We've got the first one out of the way for the day. Told you it would be a bit light, a bit fluffy, and show how stupid these people are. Anyway, till next time, stay safe, stay well. I'll see you in the next video, and goodbye.